Hello and welcome to the Evo India YouTube channel, and welcome to the first ride review of the all new Ducati Multistrada V2. We are riding the V2 S. This is a brand new motorcycle. It has a ground up new chassis, a ground up new engine. The design is also new and fresh. And in this video, I'm going to be telling you everything you need to know about this motorcycle and whether or not you should consider getting on when it does launch in India. But before we proceed, don't forget to like this video, share it with like-minded enthusiasts, and smash that bell icon for all things thrill of riding. Now let's kick things off with the design of this motorcycle. As you can see, it has gotten a pretty large facelift over the model that it replaces. It's not really a facelift, it is an all-new generation of the mid-weight capacity Multistrada, and the design reflects just that. It's more in line with the bigger V4 now. If you look at the headlights, the DRLs and the beak with the windscreen as well, and this entire side paneling, all these have all been redesigned keeping the bike's focus in mind. Now these aren't winglets as they look like. They're not meant for downforce. They're more meant for channeling wind through to keep the rider cool and to also keep a good steady flow of air. Now the overall motorcycle has become a little smaller, a little tighter, and that much more interesting and agile as well. To that end, you have a slightly shorter wheelbase. The overhangs are also smaller. You have a tighter rear section. The tail light is also all new and it does look pretty stunning in my opinion. Now this V2S, it will be available in two colors, this red that you see here and another green that will be on your screen right now. Which one do you prefer? Let me know in the comment section down below. I quite like the way this red one looks. Now coming back to the V4 inspiration, you have this new windscreen with these deflectors as well. So the function of these deflectors is to send wind around you so that you're not feeling a lot of wind blast when you're on the highway, on your shoulders, on your chest. So that keeps you pretty fatigue free. And you also have the same adjustment system for the height of the visor as you do on the Multistrada V4. Apart from that, it's a familiar looking bike, it's a stunning looking bike, and I quite like what Ducati have done with this new generation of the Multistrada V2. Now the design of the Multistrada V2 is new, but that's not what the significant change for this generation is. There are two major significant changes, and the first of which is the engine. Now what you're looking at here is the brand new 890cc V-twin engine. Now this Ducati debuted a little while back just before the EICMA, and the first bikes that were showcased with this engine were the Panigale V2 and the Streetfighter V2, and then this Multistrada. Now this engine is a completely new engine. It's a ground up new engine. It has nothing to do with the Testastretta engine. The whole purpose of this engine was to make something that lives up to the character of this and build on that. So to that end, you have a little more power, a little more torque, but the major thing is that this is a lot lighter than before. This is almost 6 kilos lighter than the engine it replaces while going up in power, and that means only good news for us enthusiasts. Now to that end, this makes around 114 bhp and 92 odd newton meters of torque. That, coupled with the fact that the bike weighs nearly 18 kilos less than before, means that this is a lot of fun. Now one of the major concerns and the complaints that we had with the previous model was that the power delivery was a little too peaky, and to really extract all of its performance you really need to be on the boil. But on this, the way the power is spread out, the way the gearing is done is such that you have a very potent low end and a mid range as well, and the top end performance is still there. It may not be as explosive as before, but it is certainly engaging. Now riding around town, getting up to the twisties, you have a lot of low end and mid range punch, and that really means you don't need to be messing around with the gearbox all that much. Third, fourth gear, and you can do some really low speeds and really pick up the pace when you want to as well. Now speaking of the gearbox, you have a new gearbox with revised ratios. You have a shorter first gear and a taller sixth gear, and the ratios for 2 to 5 have also been revised, all to make it that much more flexible to go with the new character of the engine. Now to that end, the refinement levels are great. There were barely any vibes to complain of, and we did ride in various riding conditions, which really did allow us to play with the entire rev range. So to that end, there are no real vibrations to complain of. There are some, but that's more character than a problem really. Ducati has also upgraded the quick shifter on this. It's called the DQS version 2, and what they have done essentially is take the quick shifter sensor away from the lever and put it in the drum of the gearbox. What that translates to for you and me is a more precise and a more urgent reaction from the quick shifter. So the second you touch the lever and slot it in the next one, it's ready to go. The same holds true for up and down shifts, and the quick shifter works really well at lower revs as well. This is not something I could say for the previous one, but on this, even slow speeds, you can really use the quick shifter very well. Now the internals of this engine have been heavily worked on to make sure that it is more thermally efficient while also making more power. Now we've been riding out in Valencia where the temperatures have been fairly low. They're nothing like what you find back home in Pune or Mumbai, India basically. So I can't really comment on the heat management just yet, but what I can tell you is I really didn't hear the radiator fan come on or feel any passive heat on my legs. So I'm assuming that's going to be similar. It will run hot, but it may not really run as hot as the previous one did, but this will be confirmed when we do our road test back in India. Coming to the touring abilities of this motorcycle, this remains a great tourer. It does live up to that Multistrada name and how you can comfortably cruise around in 6th gear at around 100 to 120 kmph and you're barely doing 4,500 RPM, and you open the throttle and that mid-range will take you all the way up to the red line, with performance coming at a really nice pace till up to 9,000 RPM. After that, it's a flatter, slower pull to the top speed of this motorcycle. Now, as far as the throttle response of this is concerned, this does have a ride-by-wire system with multiple ride modes, multiple power modes, and all of it works really well. Now, in full power mode, in sport and touring, you get access to the full 114 bhp. In touring, however, the throttle response is a little softer, so you have a little less urgency in the way the power is delivered, but you still have all the performance. In sport mode, it is a lot more dynamic, it's a lot more sharper and aggressive, but it's never really uncomfortable or uncontrollable. It is not at all twitchy, and you are always in control of what the throttle is doing. Now, when you come to the wet or the low grip modes, the power drops down to around 92 and 95 horsepower, but it doesn't feel like a lazy, lethargic bike. It's still very engaging, but also very manageable. And I think my biggest takeaway from this change in the engine is just how much more friendly this bike has become, and you really don't need to be chasing the red line to enjoy its performance. It has a lot to offer in all the revs that it has. Now, as I mentioned before, there are two major changes to this motorcycle apart from the design. Now, the engine I have already covered. The next thing is the frame. Now, as you can very clearly see, Ducati has done away with the trellis frame and have instead opted to go for an aluminium monocoque for the front and a trellis subframe for the rear. Now, the front mounts to the engine somewhere around here and the rear mounts somewhere around here, making the engine a stressed member of the entire setup. Now, what this has done is make this bike agile, communicative, and also very friendly. Not that the previous one wasn't, but this just takes it one step further. It's a really friendly bike, and it's one that really loves quick direction changes. Now, the whole theme of this particular generation has been to increase performance but also reduce weight, and to that end, like I already mentioned, Ducati has managed to shave off around 18 kilos from the curb weight of this motorcycle, and a lot of that weight savings comes from the engine, which is around 6 odd kilos, and also that frame. The aluminum monocoque frame has taken away a lot of the weight that a traditional steel trellis setup usually introduces to the equation. Now, to that end, Ducati have also worked really hard to reduce the unsprung mass of the motorcycle, which when you do reduce the unsprung mass, it results in a bike that's a lot more agile and a lot more keen on changing direction quicker. So to that end, Ducati have managed to shave off around 2 kilos in the wheels alone. And when you add all those things up, you reach that 18 kilo figure fairly quickly. Now, in terms of the handling of the motorcycle, the bike has not only reduced in weight, but it has become slightly smaller in all the right places as well. Around 14 millimeters is what the wheelbase has come in by. The trail remains the same, but the rake angle has been reduced by a degree. So that translates to a front end that's a lot more ferocious, it's a lot sharper, but at the same time it's not scary. So even if you don't have a lot of experience, you can still make full and good use of the chassis setup. Now we are riding the V2 S variant, which means you get the Ducati semi-active Skyhook suspension setup. This also has minimum preload settings, so for shorter riders, along with adjusting the seat height, you can reduce the seat height, and you can also long press this dedicated suspension button that's on the right switch cube to reduce the seat height by effectively around 8 millimeters. But on the other side of that, the active suspension, it allows for dynamic damping and the kind where you can have an auto leveling function. So if you don't want to mess around with the preload, you can just set it on the auto leveling function and it works really well. Now again, like I said, we've been riding in Valencia and the roads here are pristine. They're nothing like what you'll find back in India, but those odd few bumps that were there, the suspension seemed to manage really well. In terms of the wheel setup, you continue to get a 19-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear wheel. Now these wheels are shod in Pirelli Scorpion Trail 2 tires. They are very good for the kind of tires they are. Now Ducati doesn't market this as a serious off-roader. You have the Desert X for that. This is a light off-roader and the tire should handle pretty much everything in the light off-roading sense of what you have. We haven't ridden it off-road yet, so I can't comment on that, but from what I did experience on the road, it seems like it will handle the light stuff fairly well. Now out on the highway, it's a very stable motorcycle. You can sit at triple digit speeds very comfortably, and at the same time when you get to the twisties, it's a whole lot of fun. An adventure bike like this shouldn't really handle the way this does, but this just puts a big smile on your face with how friendly it is in the corners. It really loves getting chucked around in the corners. The front is very light, it's very nimble, it's very agile, and it's a whole lot of fun. It feels a lot more responsive than before, and that's also down to the fact that it weighs a lot less than before. Now I've spent all day riding the Ducati Multistrada V2 S around Valencia and the hills that it has to offer, and I've had a great time. The Multistrada V2 S in this current generation is a big step over the model it replaces, and it's a great step in the right direction. The choices for the frame, the new engine, all of it tying together to make a very good bike a lot better, and that's not an easy task, especially considering that it is a Ducati, because the benchmark is already very high. But the engineers of Ducati have pulled out a rabbit out of their hat, and they have delivered on a great product. Now when it comes to the Indian market, this motorcycle is expected to hit our shows in the third quarter of 2025. Now we don't know what the prices are as of filming this review. The current motorcycle retails for 18 odd lakhs in the V2 S trim. I'm assuming for all the changes and for all the upgrades, the price will go up a little, but you are getting a lot of bike for the money. You're getting more performance, less weight, all the things an enthusiast wants, and this is a stock motorcycle. Now with that, I would like to end this review by saying that this is a great motorcycle, and if you're looking for a middleweight tourer, you should definitely have your eyes on this one. But before leaving you, I just want to let you know that this is the very same engine that does duties in the Panigale V2 and the Streetfighter V2, and there are a whole bunch of different changes from this engine on that. And given how exciting this engine is in this motorcycle, I really cannot wait to experience those two motorcycles. Now with that said, what do you think about the Multistrada V2 S? Let me know in the comment section down below, and as always, thank you for watching.